Hello, everyone, and welcome to Proline Direct from Las Vegas. Football is back, folks. The best time of the sports wagering calendar. I'm John Crane in Las Vegas, joined by everybody today. We got Dave Cochran here, Jeff Sauter runs Las Vegas Sports Services, and Jim Feist. Going to take a look at some of the NFL Week 1 preseason games, some line movements, and some opinions on some of the games. Let's start off with this game here going on Friday night. You got Denver playing at Seattle. We've seen these teams quite a bit the last couple of years, not just the Super Bowl, but also a couple of preseason matchups here. Bettors have already told us what they want. Seattle opened 4, now up to 5.5 with a total of 37.5. And Jim, Pete Carroll's team has been great at home, not just the regular season, but dominant too in the preseason. How do you see this one?
Well, you have the old versus the new, the youth, because you got the quarterback issue. 39-year-old Peyton Manning, they're going to go a little bit more to a running game. They're going to try to protect the guy a little bit, and that makes a lot of sense. You got a new head coach, new offensive coordinator. You got John Elway's influence there. They certainly don't want to see Manning go out with a big injury. I think they're going to be conservative. They do have a decent backup, and I think he should be getting more playing time as well. Because if Manning does get dinged, you need somebody to come in. If you especially want to be a real Super Bowl contender, you can't sit there with one quarterback. Now, on the other side of the fence, Pete Carroll kind of goes all out in these games, and he has the young QB. They've lost a couple people on defense, and they got a holdout in Cameron there, so that's a problem. But this is preseason, and remember, you got two veteran coaches. We all know that game 1 of the preseason is absolutely meaningless for two teams that are this stockpiled with talent. So I'm not going to say that I absolutely love Seattle in this spot, because the line movement is open 4 up to 5, which is pretty big, and 83% of the betting public is on Seattle. That's also a problem. I look to Seattle as the winner. Maybe it's a money line bet. It probably is a money line bet, but you're going to be laying a decent price there. So I'll throw it back to you, John.
All right, yeah, that Sunday game, you had the Minnesota Vikings. That was a situation where the Vikings and their young head coach did seem to want the game more than a team like Pittsburgh, but those are key situations to look at. Dave, you got Gary Kubiak taking over here in Denver, and he's got a pretty good preseason record, 19-11-2 against the spread, but he's going to put his imprint on this team.
Yeah, this is, by the way, this is a surprise guest appearance. I kind of walked in the door to say hello to my friends, and hey, we're shooting a pro line. You want to sit down? Yeah, why not? Sounds good. And no makeup, okay?
We have some cake coming in soon.
Oh, good. All right. Yeah, it's really for the snacks. Look, the rule of thumb in the NFL preseason for me is never lay more than 3. Because, especially early on, if you can get some good information on a game later in preseason, maybe there are exceptional spots where you can lay a bunch of points. But the rule of thumb for me has always been, if it's more than 3, leave the game alone or take the dog. And I would subscribe to that theory here. The Arizona State kid, Osweiler, he's been around long enough so he could probably run the offense for a few series. It's a meaningless game, and if you're laying big points in meaningless games, you're probably going to get bit more often than not. If you look at Sunday's game between the Vikings and the Steelers were horrible in that football game, and yet they were a couple of plays away from covering the spread.
And everything was in favor of being on Minnesota. They started more starters. Pittsburgh didn't start a lot of starters. And like you said, if it wasn't for a turnover here or a turnover there or a drop pass, they could have covered.
Yeah, absolutely. So, to me, and I'm not going to play this game because I'm more selective in preseason than I used to be. There used to be, I'll go out on a little tangent here for a minute and talk about preseason football as a whole. We talked about this yesterday when we had some lunch.
Yeah, we did.
It used to be that that a guy with good information, and this is prior to the internet, and there was good information out there. If you had good media contacts or contacts within teams and things like that, you could get player rotations, and you could get them before the books had the information and before other players had the information. Then the information would get out there later in the week, but by that time you'd have saved 2, 3, maybe even 4 points on the betting line. And that's enormous. That doesn't happen anymore. You don't see swings like that because all the information is public at the same time now. Basically, if you hear the phrase inside information at this point, you probably want to dismiss it in most cases. It just doesn't exist. not at the pro level. You might find it in the colleges sometimes, especially college basketball in some of the smaller conferences, but not in the National Football League. So, to me, there's less good spots now in the NFL preseason than there used to be. I think you have to be more selective. This is a game that would fit into that criteria for me. I don't see where there's a good play to be made in this game. But if I had to bet it, gun to head, I'd take the points.
All right, Jeff. Well, Gary Kubiak coming to Denver, and he said that he wants his quarterbacks to be mobile. And I wonder about the good luck with a 39-year-old Peyton Manning, getting him to be mobile, especially at this stage in his career. So, which team do you think is going to be fired up for this preseason opener?
Well, neither team was fired up for this game, but last year they played in the first game of the preseason. It was 21-16. Denver won. It was an ugly game. There was a lightning delay. There were 25 penalties. Manning was 10 of 13, 78 yards. Russell Wilson 4 of 6 of 37 yards. Jim might have the best deal here with the Seahawks on the money line because it is too many points to lay in an exhibition game. Osweiler is taking most of the snaps this week. He'll probably play most of the game. He's in the last year of his contract, so this is kind of like an audition for him. If Manning retires, he might want to. He might have some motivation here to look good in the preseason. Other quarterbacks are Zach Dysart, third-year player from Miami, Ohio, and then Trevor Siemian, rookie from Northwestern. Kubiak wants to run more this year, but with Manning there, he can only do that. He can only run so much. Demaryius Thomas, who held out of, he skipped the offseason practice because of contract negotiations. He might play in this game, but it's doubtful, and they're going to be thin in the. They're going to be thin on defense too. So these coaches, they both have good preseason records. Curl 23-14 straight up. Kubiak 19-13 straight up, and they're both over coaches in the preseason. Curl 21-9-2 to the over. Kubiak 15-9 to the over. But the total here is about 37. So maybe Seahawks money line and maybe to the over, John.
Yeah, I can't go against a team like Seattle at home in this situation based on just the numbers. Look at the last 2 years. They've been terrific, both straight up and against the spread under this coach at home. In fact, 2 years ago, which was the last time these teams met in week 2 of preseason, it was a disaster for Denver. They didn't even care about the game. 40-10 on this same field. In fact, it was 33-7 at the half, so Seattle showed up big time right off the bat. And the thing about that game is Peyton Manning actually played a lot, which should surprise a lot of people. He threw for 163 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks, 11 of 16 passing. But boy, they got killed. So there's something about Pete Carroll, the old college coach, comes out in him as he gets these guys fired up. So I'm not going to go against him. I understand the money movement in this game. So, and I can't imagine that Denver being fired up on the road like this.